Model delivery is at the heart of the AI delivery lifecycle. But just because you've got the system working, it doesn't mean you can prove that it's safe. And if you're building or selling in the EU, that's not just risky, it could be non-compliant, unlawful, and reputationally devastating. Now, with penalties of up to 35 million euros kicking in from the 2nd of August, you need to know exactly what you're doing and avoid the silent risks that catch even experienced teams off guard. Now, in this video, I'll walk you through the 9 critical steps of model delivery and show you how they align with your legal obligations under the EU AI Act. Hey friends, I'm Ahmed. I help professionals deliver enterprise AI solutions that help, not harm. In this series, we're applying the EU AI Act to the 10 steps of the AI delivery lifecycle, one step at a time. So we can each do our part to responsibly build a world we want to live in. So let's go through each of these steps. In the previous video, in this series, we covered framing the problem, defining the use case, assessing the data and its readiness. We covered the solution design and approach, the team formation, and today in steps 6 and 7, we're covering both the model delivery and the validation. So by the end of this lesson, you'll understand of the 113 EU AI Acts, which are the ones you really need to focus on and why, the 9 steps involved in delivering a model in a non-AI native organization, and how the chosen articles apply to each of these. We'll also talk about what documentation and evidence you'll need to stay compliant, and most importantly, how to build this into your delivery process so it doesn't slow down and hinder your overall progress. Right, now for those who are new, I always use the AI Act Explorer. The link is on the screen and in the description below. So I would say that there are 4 key articles that apply to this model delivery stage. Normally I like to select the top 3, but it's really too hard to make a judgment call there. So to make sure it will have a sensible overview, we are looking into the top 4 most important articles that you really need to think about. So coming in as no surprise over here, for those of you who have seen previous videos, article number 9, risk management. Because this applies to practically every stage, we need to identify and manage all the potential risks that the AI system could pose throughout its life cycle, and model delivery is no exception to that. Article 11 is around technical documentation. So this is where we need to keep clear, structured records showing how our AI system was built and why it's safe. And so that's going to be important during model delivery and our documentation of that overall process. Article 13 is around transparency and a provision of information to the user. So users really need to understand what the AI does, how to use it properly, and any limits or risks that it actually has. And article number 15 is around accuracy, robustness, and cybersecurity. So your AI really needs to work reliably, handle the edge cases, and be protected against attacks and failures. Okay, so now let's have a look and see how these 4 articles apply to these 9 stages. But before we do that, I want to quickly walk you through the 9 steps of the AI delivery lifecycle. So let's do that. So first of all, coming up, number 1, you have confirming the modeling objectives and evaluation metrics. And this is things like accuracy, relevance, response consistency, and latency. And we're defining the success thresholds and the acceptance criteria for validation over here. This is second is around the selection of the foundation model and the baseline architecture. Now, most non-AI native organizations don't train or fine-tune their models. They typically select a pre-trained foundation model, and then based upon that, based upon the type of model that they're using, they may decide, and the use case, they may decide whether they want to use a RAG or a prompt-based or an API wrapped, and how their overall architecture is going to look like. Okay. Now, with the introduction of Grok, you've got different flavors of models as well. Some are multi-agentic as well, out of the box, and so that can impact the architecture as well. If you want to learn more about that, then click on the link on the screen over here where I cover that in a lot more detail. Okay, moving on to number 3, and that's around preparing and training the validation data. So we've already assessed, we made sure that the data is available. Now we're extracting the data, making sure that we are preparing the specific subsets for the training, the validation and retrieval, and we want to make sure it's clean and transformed and labeled as necessary for the model use. And we also want to make sure that we align the training data formats to what's expected from the model inputs as well. Then what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're implementing the LLM wrappers and the integration logic. So over here, this is where we are actually implementing whatever approach we've actually selected over here. And we've thought about the RAG setup, the guardrails, any function calling, any orchestration layers, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, then after that, we are now into evaluating the model performance, and then based upon the responses we get from that and how well they're dealing with our providing with our overall expected results, we then refine the prompts, the parameters, and the retrieval logic until we get the results that we actually need. We're going to continue that kind of iteration over there. Then once we're happy, we're then going to start to look at testing for the robustness and the security. And this is where we wanted to start to pressure test our model to make sure that if we're providing ambiguous or malicious prompts or misleading prompts, we want to start to simulate prompt injections and misuse and failure conditions. And we want to make sure that we can test ethical edge cases and make sure that there's no bias or any other risk like that to the users as well. So that's where 7 actually comes in. 8 is where we are now producing the necessary documentation. And this is where really Article 11 really kicks in and defines, we want to be defining what the model decisions are, the architecture and the key assumptions that we've made. We want to be logging and versioning, have details of the versions of the models, the configurations and the test runs. We want to have the evidence of all of that kind of things. And we want to record any other information to do with why we selected foundation models, what the kind of prompt structures are, the orchestration logic, any of the filters that we've used, the risk mitigation, and all those kind of different things covered over here, which really covers off all the necessary requirements that are needed for Article 11. Okay, then finally, we are going to be conducting a peer review, and then we freeze the model, and then we hand off. Okay, so those are the 9 different steps. Now let's have a look and see how these 4 articles apply to these 9 different steps. So you can be sure when you're actually building it, you've thought about this stuff up front. You're not trying to add this on afterwards. It's going to add a huge amount of work. It's going to make sure you're not really properly compliant because you need to build these things in from the beginning. And that's why we're having this conversation now. Okay, so if you look on the screen, what you're going to see is a table that actually outlines how these 9 steps apply to these, or rather how the 4 articles apply to these 9 steps. Okay, so I'm going to go through the top 3 to give you an idea, and then you can do the remainder at your own leisure by taking a screenshot. Okay, so number 1, around confirming the modeling objectives and evaluation metrics. Obviously, risk management, Article 9, because this helps us to scope the risk really early, and Article 15, where we can define the metrics for the accuracy. Then, step number 2, when we come to selecting the foundation model, this affects our system level risk. So Article 9 applies over here, and any design choices that we made need to be documented. That's where Article 11 comes in. If we've got any impact on the user, we need to make sure that we make that really clear to support Article 13. And if your architecture impacts the performance or robustness, we need to make sure that we have that dialed in so that we don't fall foul of Article 15. Then step number 3, around preparing training and validation data. Again, we want to make sure if there's any risks associated with the data, that's covered off and that's documented and those are mitigated. Article 11 shows what kind of data we're using, what's the lineage, what's the provenance of that. We want to make sure we have all of that over there. And again, if we need any user inputs, we make it clear that that's what we're going to be doing with the data and how it's going to train or provide a reinforcement training to the actual model as well. and Article 15, which is around accuracy, robustness, and cybersecurity. We want to make sure if there's any poor data or any data issues that we've got that impacts our accuracy, we want to try and see if we can fix that so that we stay compliant with Article 15. So I'll let you do the remainder yourself. You can see that very clearly on the screen. So that gives you an idea of how you're going to apply these 4 different articles to these 9 different steps. And when you've done that, you can have a good degree of confidence in what you've actually developed. So let me ask you a question now. If your AI system leads to a failure, delay, or harm, can you confidently stand in front of your board or regulator and explain how it was delivered, governed, and proven to be safe? Okay, so in summary, model delivery isn't just a technical exercise. It also has very important safety and responsibility implications. And we walked through the 9 model delivery steps, and we showed how those steps align with 4 key articles of the EU AI Act, Article 9, 11, 13, and 15. Getting this wrong isn't just inefficient under the EU AI Act, it can be illegal. And most importantly, getting it right will mean you'll have a system that's effective, that's dependable, that's ready for scale. But most importantly, you'll feel confident to know that you've fulfilled your responsibility to build the safest system you can for your customers and your users. Next week, we're going to be talking about productionization and deployment. So hit the subscribe and bell notification, and I'll see you next week. Take care. Goodbye.